buying commercial real estate, and I use the name Beyond Multifamily for a couple of reasons. One of them is to just define what is it that we're going to be talking about here. And of course, my attorney advised me to show this little disclaimer to you. I don't plan to read it, but this presentation is strictly for educational purposes. I'm not going to be selling anything, at least not today. In terms of my story, I'm not going to go into too much detail other than say that I had a almost 25 plus years of career in tax accounting and technology. Got into real estate about 8-9 years ago, first passive, then active, and pretty much have been shifting focus from one area to the other. My current focus is commercial real estate. While it's beyond multifamily, I still do invest and buy multifamily to this day. But the main reasoning for me was my portfolio has a lot of multifamily, and I felt like the multifamily market was a little bit tight. So I wanted to find something else. So let's talk about that. Everyone knows how difficult 2023 was and how great the 4 or 5 years before that were. And obviously, real estate goes through multiple cycles. And don't you wish the good old days of multifamily would come back, where you have less competition, no bidding wars, you get a deal in a matter of days. And then there's no competition with institutional capital, and you just get it under contract and buy it. Well, those days are gone, and I don't think we're gonna ever see them come back to us. But the majority of the folks here in a multifamily, and just like with a single family, actually, instead of assuming, if you folks just could write in the chat how many of you have bought single family before going to multifamily. And I don't know if I can see the chat. Yes, I can see the chat. Like, just write I or one. This will tell me. Okay. Greg is saying yes. Anyone else bought single family or condos before going into multi? Then, yeah. Okay. Manjul, then Jerry. Oh, Jerry, no. Okay. Okay. I have one exception. John saying yes. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that pretty much tells me that majority of folks, and I'm no exception to that, of course. I started with condos and single families as well. But guess what? Because everyone is going into multifamily, I feel like that market is oversaturated, and there is a need to pivot. So what do people do? They pivot into other commercial real estate, such as self-storage, maybe short-term rentals. I heard someone say here that they're doing short-term rentals using Airbnb, maybe mobile home parks, or I even know a few folks that are pivoting into buying laundromats and buying car washes. I'm sure a bunch of people here know Dave Zook, that he's very big on the car washes and stuff. So all of those asset classes are essentially slowly getting saturated. Well, what if we could go back in time in the good old days and find the asset classes that are not exactly oversaturated? Those asset classes still do exist. And those are the asset classes that we're going to be talking about. They include such asset classes as mixed use, shopping plazas, medical offices, industrial, flex space, and so forth. And all of them are called commercial real estate. But there are people that specialize in one of them, and there are people that buy different types of asset classes, but within that commercial real estate category, essentially. So when you were switching from single family to multifamily, before that switch happened, for a lot of folks, again, including myself, it was like a big jump. How am I gonna do it? Where I'm gonna find the money to buy it? How am I gonna get financing? Essentially, the same thing applies to switching from multifamily, or maybe it's a matter of not switching, but adding, in addition to multifamily, adding those triple nets or other commercial real estate classes to your portfolio. How do you do that? A lot of it comes down to um, moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And this book by Dr. Carol Dweck is a great addition to your library in case anyone hasn't read it or hasn't listened. I highly recommend it. She is an expert on the subject and has a lot of tips, not only for people in a professional or business careers, but also for personal stuff such as relationship or dealing with the kids and stuff. So I definitely highly recommend to read this book or listen, whatever you prefer. But all of these mindset obstacles that you have in your mind, I don't know anything about it, it's too risky, it requires a lot of funds. All of it can be overcome by learning about it, understanding it, reading about it, maybe joining a mastermind. For instance, in my case, I joined the mastermind called Beyond Multifamily by Ash Patel. At the time when I was thinking that, I have enough of multifamily, now is the time to move into something else. So I decided to search for a group that would help me learn the process, learn the fundamentals of commercial assets, and I found that knowledge in Beyond Multifamily Mastermind, and I'm happy I joined that group last year because it's been very beneficial and I definitely learned a lot. So bottom line, nothing is too hard. Everything is learnable. You can learn it and you can do it on your own with partners or through syndications or by passively investing, and the sky's the limit essentially. So what are the benefits of the commercial real estate investing? Well, yes, there is less competition, and I'm not saying that the deals are everywhere and you can pick one up tomorrow, but they do exist, and it's a matter of being creative, putting some creativity into the deals, finding them just like with multifamily, direct to owner or building relationship with the brokers and finding them through brokers as well. Another benefit is remember that your tenants in the case of commercial real estate are business owners just like yourself. So it's a lot easier to deal with them because they're running a business, they understand that you're running a business. So the conversation is a lot more professional as opposed to when you're dealing with tenants in apartments or single family homes. Another great benefit is the multi-year leases. So if you dealing with a large corporate tenant, the leases could be as long as 10 or even 20 years sometimes, especially those triple net leases with the corporate guarantee. But even with the smaller mom and pop owners, the leases typically are 3 to 5 years. You can, of course, sign a month-to-month lease if you're deciding to sell, or if you have plans to maybe modify your property. But in general, when the leases are signed, they're signed for a very long time. The benefit is twofold. Number one, and it's listed here, it becomes less management intensive. You don't need to come back to it every single year. And number two, if you decide to sell your property, well, you're presenting the next buyer with the tenants that are still going to be staying in your property for a number of years. So that's also an additional benefit when presenting your offer to the next buyer. The rent comps are much wider. You don't need to look at a 1 to 2 miles radius. It's much wider. And then you look at other towns. The only caveat here is to look at the like assets. So in other words, if you're trying to lease, let's say an office space, don't look at the retail, look at another office space in the area and see what the comps are showing for that. And then there is a possibility of adding extension to the leases. So the lease could be 3 to 5 years, for example, but you may have multiple extensions in that lease for additional maybe 2 5-year periods with the increases already written in the lease. And then leasing or even selling a place that has second generation spaces. And those that are not familiar, second generation space is the space that has specialty equipment. Let's say it was a hair salon or a TGI Friday. Some of you have probably heard that TGIF is closing a bunch of locations in New Jersey. So that will be a second generation space that will be available for sale or for lease, and it will be perfectly suitable to be leased to another restaurant. It doesn't matter whether it's mom and pop or another chain, but the place already has a large commercial kitchen installed, large sit-down area, and so forth. So that's perfect, and that offers some significant tax savings component. Other benefits that are offered with commercial real estate is just your lease can offer the increase in the value of the property twice or even 3 to 4 to 5 times, essentially, because of how the rent increases are structured. The economic cycles are very, very different from multifamily. And then the build out agreements are different as well. Imagine if a tenant wanted to remodel. In most of the cases, that remodeling will fall on them. Of course, there are exceptions to the case, but typically, if tenants are redoing the place, that's obviously to benefit their business, so they would have to be putting some money on the table to do that remodeling for them. And then the commercial real estate may also have corporate or personal guarantee. Corporate guarantee is typically done by large big box retailers such as Dollar Deals, again, TGI Fridays of the world, LabCorp, and so forth. Personal guarantees are usually offered by medical offices, and again, it could be as good as the corporate guarantee. And essentially what that corporate guarantee entails, I'll give you another New Jersey example. So some of the Walgreens stores have been going dark. If they still have the lease for certain duration, because of that corporate guarantee, they're required to continue paying the rent until that lease expires. So that's the corporate guarantee. In the case of triple nets, tenant might be responsible for paying not just taxes, but also insurance and then CAM, common area maintenance. So essentially all the maintenance expenses are on them as well. Keep in mind, in terms of triple nets, there are two different types of leases. There is an absolute net, which entails that all of the expenses, absolutely everything is on the tenant. And then there is a triple net lease, which includes taxes, insurance, and maintenance. But usually things like structure and roof still fall on the owner, on a landlord. And then another benefit that commercial real estate has is things like lease renewals happen at least 6 months in advance. So guess what? If your tenants want to leave in, let's say, August, then now is the time for them to let you know that they're leaving, and that gives you some time to either renegotiate the lease terms with them for the future if they want to stay, or start marketing your property and find the next tenant in advance. So just like you would never go back to just buying single family homes when you went from single family to multifamily. In a similar fashion, once you switch to commercial or add that to your portfolio, you want to stick to it, or you want to buy more of the commercial properties in general. And then the usage of the facilities is minimal. In other words, you don't have to deal with showers, there are no pets, no cooking unless it's a restaurant, and no kids unless, of course, it's a daycare. So the wear and tear is a lot less than in multifamily from that standpoint. And then if we talking about tenants and the quality of tenants, think of multifamily, of apartments, residential apartments. What would make them more attractive? For example, if you have such celebrities as, for instance, Michael Jordan live in your apartment complex, wouldn't that make it a lot more attractive for other tenants? Well, the celebrities in commercial real estate are actually Dollar General, Starbucks, and Chipotle's of the world. Why? Because when you have these quality tenants, they usually attract other similar quality tenants to the neighborhoods. That's why more often than not, when you see Chipotle, you'll probably see Panera Bread or Starbucks, and same with McDonald's. You see McDonald's, there will be Wendy's or a Burger King nearby. Why? Because they know that McDonald's had already done their research. It's a great geographical location. It's all about location for them. So then other restaurants can come into the area because that research is already completed for them. So I want to make this interactive, and the plan is not to spend time on the presentation. So I actually prepared 2 examples, and we of course can go into many more that you guys will find of commercial properties. So let me move it here. So this is a mixed use. I figured for multifamily investors, mixed use would be easier to understand. And for those that are not familiar, mixed use entails that you have an apartment, but in addition to apartment, you have another commercial unit. So in this case, it's a mixed use in New Jersey, in Hopatcong, actually, with a restaurant, deli on the bottom, and then an apartment upstairs. As you can see, it's fully occupied, but again, there are only 2 units here. The restaurant is on the bottom and the apartment is upstairs. It's been on the market for about 4 months, so obviously something is off with that offering, that people are not moving to buy it very, very fast. And what you'll also find for the commercial properties is more often than not, the offering memorandum is already listed. If it's not listed, this is actually not offering memorandum, just the calculation. Then you can always request that offering memorandum from the broker. In this case, there are only 2 units, so everything is listed on 1 page. But usually the offering memorandums will have the income from all the properties. If there are some of the maintenance expenses that are paid back, they will also be listed in the offering memorandum, as well as the duration of the leases, and if there are any lease extensions, the square footage, because in a lot of cases, the price per unit in the commercial space is per square footage. So what I did is I prepared and like a brief underwriting for this property, just to show you what can be done. So they are asking 709,000 for the property, assuming the rate is still at 8 and you're putting 30% down. This is the rental income that was listed for this property. I put down their taxes and insurance, and then I added some maintenance, just a ballpark number, so we have something. As you can see, and as expected, the cash on cash on this unit is still negative. So obviously, because they're trying to sell this at a 5 or even below cap rate. but with a little bit of tweaking, we can definitely make this offer more attractive, and I'm gonna go through that. But before I'm gonna go through it. Let me stop, and I'm sorry I forgot to do that, and ask if there are any questions so far.
So I'll jump right in. Is this a kind of a underwriting tool that's specific for triple net lease?
This is commercial underwriting tool that we use in our Invest Beyond Multifamily Mastermind. As you can see, it's a high level. It's definitely not for syndications, but if you're buying property yourself or with partners, this tool will suffice to understand whether the property makes sense for you to buy. And in the case of triple net, Jerry, this would work as well, pretty much because your expenses will either be non-existent or you will have a minimal expenses, which you can just list here under expense section. And it will tell you what your cash on cash is and whether you have the sufficient DSCR to finance the property. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions, guys? I'm sorry, I forgot to ask earlier. So far, so good. Okay. Let me then keep going. So they mentioned in the flyer, let me see, where's the flyer? That the lease is going to be increasing. Where's that? Let me see. Unit 2, so the apartment lease. Let me just take a look. Yeah, so they're saying 1700. So the description actually mentions that the lease will go to 1700, but it's not there yet. I know I read it somewhere. Second floor, 2 bedrooms. Yeah, here we go. So it's 1500 right now, but it will be going up to 1700. So that's what I wanted to show in this underwriting. I started with 1500 and just multiplied it by 12 months. But then the next option will show their raised rent and what it will look like. We're still at a negative cash flow, so the deal would still not work for us. So the next step that I took in this case is I lowered the price. So what if instead of offering 709,000, we would offer them 550, and then also assuming that the lease for the deli space is expiring soon, let's increase their lease terms by $100, just by $100 a month, not more. What will that do to income? So I'm marking all the areas that are changing in green just to show what's changing. And the reason these three expenses have been changed, they've been actually lowered, because if it's a commercial lease, most likely taxes, insurance, and maintenance will go on a tenant. And maybe the previous owner wasn't doing that, but if I'm writing a new lease with this deli, then I will certainly add that to the lease. And it could be a triple net, or it could be a modified gross lease, which is just a term for a lease that's not all inclusive, but where you can modify as to what expenses fall on the tenant versus the landlord. So I'm assuming that at least a fraction of the expenses will fall on my commercial tenant. And I simply took the fraction based on a square footage of the deli versus apartment here. So it's really a ballpark in this case. And only left expenses that I would be paying as a landlord, because in the case of the apartment, the landlord pays the taxes, insurance, and the maintenance expenses. But the utilities are in both cases are paid by the tenants. That's why they're not listed here, because they're not your expenses. And guess what happened with this? modification, your cash on cash jumped to 10%. Not too bad, right? Not the greatest, but definitely much better. And by the way, in our mastermind, Ash always strives to encourage us to look at the properties that offer higher cash on cash, such as mid to high teens or even mid to high 20s or more. And some of it may not come directly from the value add, but maybe from a little bit of creativity. Maybe your property has, let's say, a very large parking lot, and you can use some of that parking lot to add an extra space. Or maybe there is a vacant unit that could be remodeled, and you can bring a higher paying tenant in that unit than the one you previously had. So by adding a little bit of value to your property, or in some cases a lot of value, there is a way to increase the bottom line by finding that value add. And sometimes it's just not in your face. Sometimes you have to look for that value add component. What's also common in the commercial real estate space is to ask owner for the owner finance. And so in this next fourth scenario, I assume that we had a chance to speak with the owner, and knowing that the rates are slowly coming down, we asked them for an owner financing. In a lot of cases, it's done, it's 25-year AM, but it has a 5-year balloon. So it's at 575. That alone brings us over to a cash on cash increase up to 14%. Not too bad, right? And that brings us to a much higher cap rate. So instead of being at a 4 or 5% cap rate, we're now at the 9.5% cap rate, which, of course, unheard of for New Jersey. But again, with a little bit of creativity, things are possible even in New Jersey sometimes. Questions?
Yeah, I actually am, I just looking at this picture itself is actually like, very revealing to me, because I think a lot of people, when they see triple net lease, I know I do, I'm thinking of Walgreens, like you said, like yeah, I'm thinking about those who live near me, like Garrett, I saw jumped on the call, Anthony, like Clark, New Jersey, for example. Like, yes, you something like that. That's your typical, what you're
Yep.
thinking about. And just looking at some of these, and as an example, like a year ago, we were looking at a property in Greensboro, North Carolina, which was I think I forget exactly if it was 20 units, and there was it was a mixed use. There was three retail. One of them was a restaurant, a tattoo parlor, and I forget a cleaners. And those those three businesses were actually driving the NOI way more than the retail itself. I mean than the multifamily itself. And I also feel you end up actually competing against less people, because people see retail and they just get away from it. They run
That's
away.
right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Jerry. That's exactly what happens. You mentioned dry cleaners. While dry cleaning is a good business and it brings decent income, keep in mind, if dry cleaners were ever in a property that you're buying or still in a property you're buying, then you will probably have to do a two-phase inspection,
Yep.
because of all the chemicals. And again, depending on what's going to be found or not found, there might be financial consequences. And then at that point, it's a matter of negotiation between the seller and the buyer, in terms of what's going to happen next, whether there are any breaks, discounts, or maybe credits at the closing because of the chemicals found due to the dry cleaners. So just keep that in mind. Another tenant that I would probably avoid is it's very popular in New Jersey now. What are they called? Not the drugs. My goodness, help me. What the new law has allowed that here, California.
The cannabis, I get,
Cannabis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marijuana.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Everybody got real quiet all of a sudden.
yeah, while it may be a popular business, and again, probably very income producing, guess what? It's not yet favored by the bank. So if you're planning to get bank finances, chances are going to be very slim you'll get it if you have cannabis as your tenant. So keep that in mind. So we try to avoid them just in case we need that bank financing. But anyway, questions? Okay, so triple net, and Jerry, yes, like you mentioned, this is a typical triple net. In this case, occupancy is 100%, but we have a single tenant. So obviously having a single tenant has its own pros and cons, because guess what? If the tenant leaves, then your place becomes dark. But if it's someone like Arbis, which is a large retailer and I'm sure very popular down south, this is in North Carolina, and I think Alan said he's in North Carolina, so maybe it's close to him. If they have corporate guarantee in the lease, they'll still be paying. But guess what? If the place is dark and there are other retailers in the area, then they are not attracting the same traffic. Additional tenant like this means additional traffic. So if you own multiple properties in the area and one of them goes dark, then it's impacting your properties as well. Or if you own this property and one tenant leaves, then you end up with a vacant unit, which obviously is not the end of the world, but still that means that you would have to find them, replace them and find a brand new tenant. And let's just look at the OAM. And OAM, for those that don't know, OAM is an offering memorandum. So they talk about high visibility, how many vehicles per day. And by the way, Craxi, which I have opened even here. So Craxi offers some of that traffic information. This is a paid version. I have a paid account. I don't think you'll get it through the free one. Some people also use, I think, Pacer UI to get that information. But when you're dealing with commercial real estate, it's kind of important to understand not only the population and the household income, but also what is the traffic in the area, how many vehicles per Placer AI here. This is limited Placer. The actual app offers you a lot more detailed information, but this at least gives you a high level details into how much traffic can you expect in the area where your property is located. And obviously you want to be more in the green rather than in red to make sure that this is a high traffic area, especially if you have a restaurant or a retailer, something that needs to attract a lot of passing by clients. Okay, let me go back to OAM. Oh, this is the first property. So, okay, this is the OM for the single triple net tenant. And again, the fact that they're triple net means that they are paying taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance. The lease doesn't indicate whether it's absolute net, but I also don't see anything describing landlord responsibility. Usually it would be described here. If not, do not make any assumptions. Always ask the broker. Ask them whether it's absolute net or whether it's just triple net, and what are the landlord responsibilities. Have them stated for you clearly and articulate. I don't see anything mentioning corporate guarantee. Let's just see corporate world. Yeah, there's nothing about corporate guarantee. And what's also interesting is they don't even mention what the income is, and hence the property is left unpriced. They want people come in and submit offers, so they're expecting that there will be very high interest for something like this. Usually, folks that are looking for somewhat of a passive investment are attracted to triple nets. Most of them offer returns that are more or less in 5 to 6% category. There are triple nets that are higher. There is a potential to find 7, 8, and sometimes even higher percentages interest, but in a lot of cases, it would have to be a value add. And how do you find the value add, or what essentially what it entails that it's a value add multifamily? If this were instead of a single tenant, let's say a 4 or 5 tenant property, where one or multiple units would be empty, that allows you to add value by finding tenants that will pay the market price, and that would allow you essentially to bring that property from a lower cap to a higher cap. Questions?
Yeah, Alina, you mentioned banks and what, certain types of assets they like better than others. Have you found that there are certain types that are more easy to get financing for? Like, for instance, I looked probably last year at it was like an in-home healthcare facility, and it was company was there established. They were selling it on triple net. And one of the brokers I spoke with in the Greenville area, seemed like he was chomping at the bit, to lend on that. So I kind of got the feeling that medical, in-home healthcare, those types of things were very favored. Are there some things that are, in your experience, that are easier than others to get financed?
Ben, great question. If you can mute others, I think it will help. Okay, no more echo. That's good. Thank you, Ben. So I know they don't favor those the drug places. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting what it's called. But other than that, they definitely not in favor of dry cleaners as well because of the chemicals. Other than that, in general, when lenders are looking at the commercial places, they want to make sure that your vacancy is low. So anything like 85% and above will be favored. If the vacancy is higher, they want to see a detailed plan from you as to how you plan to lower your vacancy. The advantages of commercial real estate like this is during your due diligence period, which could be anywhere from 30 to 90 days or sometimes even longer, you can negotiate with the broker or with the seller if you're dealing directly with the seller to allow you to market the property. And I've seen it happen multiple times. So by the time you come to the closing table, you may already have some or all of the tenants identified and the contracts in place. That will allow you to get terms from the bank that could be a lot more favorable versus when you started out and the property was only 75% occupied. And now let's say it's 90% occupied and 95. So that's definitely beneficial. Other than that, I don't think they like tattoo places. Can't tell you why, but I don't think that's favored. Other than that, the typical small retail plazas, hair salon, nail salons, restaurants, they love all that stuff. So yeah, small banks, credit unions, that's always favored. Ben, does that answer your question? You are muted, by the way.
Yes, that did. Thank you. But sorry, go ahead. Somebody else had a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ben.
I was gonna also ask, what kind of lending terms do you typically see in this space? I'm assuming small banks, and what do those terms typically look like?
Yeah. nothing is typical. More or less just like the multifamily. Again, a lot depends on the vacancy. But you know, the rates are going down, so we're somewhere around 7.5 now, 25-year M. Sometimes you can get 1-year IO. But like you said, small local banks, small credit unions, you know, if you buying a property that's several hundred or maybe a couple of millions, usually the smaller banks, or even brokers, I mean, you can tap into brokers, but they will probably also find you a smaller bank to deal with, as the returns will be a lot more favorable in such cases. When you go bigger, when you start looking at 10 million and above properties, then obviously you can go to the US banks of the world and deal with them.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Alan, I think you had a question.
Yeah, you were saying that with the corporate guarantee, that even if the outfit leaves the space, they still are required to continue paying. That would seem kind of problematic. I mean, Walmart kind of had a habit of doing that in South Texas, and they would leave the space, and then the strip mall just kind of dies because the draw isn't there anymore. It would seem kind of problematic to me to have have them leave, and yet they're still holding on to the space even though they're paying for it.
True. So not all of the leases with big boxes provide corporate guarantee, number one. Number two, it may have corporate guarantee, but the leases are written by attorneys. So one of the things that I learned the hard way is you have to carefully read the leases, because even though it may have corporate guarantee, it may have certain clauses that include caveats which are hard to understand, but essentially mean that that corporate guarantee expires or it doesn't apply in this particular case, and they apply this case to when they need to leave. So always read the leases. And by the way, the leases could be as long as the PPMs for multifamily, for syndications. Keep that in mind. Some leases are like 30 to 50 pages long. Again, a lot depends on how many tenants you have and what the terms are, but some of the leases are much longer than the typical lease with like a residential tenant. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm. Thanks for the question. Okay, other questions? If you folks want to look at more property, by all means, you know, I can search, or you can search for the property and we'll look for more. But I just wanted kind of to bring a couple of examples and show you what's possible. Medical space is popular. Again, finding higher cap will be problematic. Ton of them exist in like 5 to 6% cap rate. You may be able to find 7% cap, but it's gonna be fully occupied with a 20-year lease. And it's essentially mailbox money. So it's great for people that just wanna place their capital and they're worried about losing it. It's a perfect way to find something that's cash flowing and preserves your capital. But if someone is looking for something that gives them income to live on, cash flow, and in that case, you probably want a slightly higher cap rate than 5, 6, or 7.
Are you finding or any particular trends that you were going after? You know, whether it's a specific type of tenant or something that you're looking at that you're kind of targeting?
So in my case, I'm looking for small shopping plazas, flex spaces, and mixed use. That's just my personal preference. Other people in my group are buying industrial, medical, essentially all of the commercials that we mentioned. There's someone in the group that's looking for it, buying it, or negotiating it. we have someone who is just buying raw land and then getting all the permits for it and then selling it with the permits. We have someone who's doing that. And then another guy who buys large retail centers that are like half vacant, and he has his way, he's very strong marketing, so he's able to find tenants relatively quickly. So he does that value add quickly, and usually sells his properties within a few years. So that's been a strategy. Did that answer your question, Jerry?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. This is my contact information for those that want to connect with me. I also posted my LinkedIn link in the chat, but feel free to reach out if there are any questions. In terms of finding the properties, so Craxi, yeah, this is a paid subscription. Many people use LoopNet because it's free. Believe it or not, you can also find commercial on residential MLS. Let's just go in and JMLS, since many folks here are residential. Give me a town, guys, any town.
Cranford, New Jersey.
Cranford. Hey. Okay, so we only got residential. Okay, let's try something else. I think,
Morristown, maybe?
okay, let's try Morris. I think on JMLS more for the northern New Jersey. I think Garden State is for Garden State is for the central through south Morristown. Let's see. Okay, not this. I wanted this. Yeah, as you can see, even the search itself has commercial, business, 5-family, mixed use. I would check all of this because sometimes the business comes with real estate, you never know. So when searching for a town, you can find other things as well. And here we go. You can see commercial real estate is listed in Parsippany on residential MLS. These are other examples. So in these cases, these are just units for rent, but you never know. You may want to still call the broker and ask, is the owner interested in selling their property? That could be the case. Look how many we got. Wow, that's crazy. Another property in Hanover, and it's probably mixed use. Maybe it's a residence and an office at the same time. Retail, here's retail, you would never think, but one search, it says returns 38 results. Am I not seeing? Oh yeah, it is 38 results. Look how many we've got on just NJMLS itself by typing one single town. It looks like it gave us surrounding towns in the area, not just Morristown, but still, as you can see, you can find commercial here. And then LoopNet, a lot of people say that properties get on LoopNet to die, but I've seen even in our group, people find properties on LoopNet, especially those that sit on the market for like 100, 300, 500 days. Again, let's type Morristown. Let's see what comes up.
The other thing about LoopNet is it's a good strategy also to connect, because you will talk to some of these brokers who, sometimes may have other deals that are worthwhile.
Yep. Yeah, exactly, Jerry. You're absolutely right. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's just look at this one. So obviously they're telling you upfront that it's 7.5, 7.1 cap rate. But maybe you still want to go into details, because guess what? Maybe the property has a vacant unit and they're not accounting for that vacant unit. Maybe there is a value add component by improving the property, or maybe they have an area for the parking that hasn't been developed. So always read the details. If the property is looks interesting to you, read about it and see if there is something in it. And even if you call the broker and this property is not for you, guess what? You may have started relationship with someone who may have other properties for sale down the road. And as I mentioned, they typically include offering memorandum. And in this case, see how it's 28 pages. So it will hopefully include size, cap rate, hopefully the income information. as well as some metrics about the area and the location. Yeah, the area, so forth. The map.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a great presentation. Definitely opened my eyes to a lot. Like I said, really when I was thinking triple net, I was largely thinking of these larger properties and it just my own personal experience, having looked at that one property where that has some retail, it opened my eyes where I think people jumping all over these properties all over, like in North Carolina, and everyone was keeping away from this property, and it was just because of that, the retail. So it's a good idea for those that are looking in New Jersey or Carolina or anywhere to potentially look at these mixed use properties. So, yeah, appreciate you coming on. I don't want to take too much more of your time because I know it's a tight schedule. We've been on for an hour, so that was great. If anyone has any last questions, jump in. Otherwise, we'll, want to thank you, Alina, for coming on.
Sure. I'll wait a couple of minutes for questions.
Yeah, Alina, maybe I can ask, this is kind of a philosophical question.
Sure.
So I've always kind of considered triple net or thought of triple net as sort of an end game strategy. So you're growing through your career, you're investing, you're trying to grow your net worth, and then you get to a point where you get tired of fooling with more active type of properties, and you go buy triple net and you sit back and let the mailbox money roll in. I've heard people suggest that a younger investor, it's the wrong strategy for a younger investor essentially because it's more of an end game strategy. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that? Is that the wrong way to think about it? I'm not sure.
Ben, it's not the wrong way to think about it, but it's certainly the way triple nets have been stereotyped as something that's the end game. And I think I even mentioned that it's the most common triple nets are usually 4, 5, 6 cap at the most. And yes, people use them for cash preservation, for capital preservation, and basically park money someplace tangible instead of losing money just sitting in a checking account. But in addition to that, you can still find triple nets that offer high returns. You can definitely find 7, 8, or even 9% cap rate. Ideally, if you're looking for something that would cash flow, you want to find something where you can add value. Again, it would be a property either with vacant units or property maybe with additional land that's undeveloped, that maybe you can transform that land into another space. I'll give you another example. So one of the folks in my group, he bought a flex space on, I think it was like several acres, and the flex space itself only covered like a fraction of an acre, but his plans are to develop another acre of that space and add additional flex space so he can have more units and bring more tenants. So stuff like that allows you to add value will force your bottom line. So just like in the multifamily, you're looking for ways to increase income. How do you do it? You can do it in one of 3 ways. You can increase income, decrease expenses, or do both at the same time. The same here. You need to look for ways where you can increase your bottom line. And for that, you need to find ways where you can either bring more income, lower your expenses, or do both at the same time. Another good example in the case of, for instance, retail places like mom and pop shopping plazas, a lot of smaller owners don't know that they can put the CAM, common area maintenance, taxes and insurance on the tenants, while it's pretty much standard in a triple net. So by you coming in, hopefully at the time when the lease is expiring soon, let's say you're buying the property and it's February and the lease is expiring in May or June. Well, guess what? At that time, you can renegotiate the terms of the lease and say, hey, look, everybody else in the area has the triple net and I'm offering you triple net. It may be still $14 per square foot a year, but you have to take on this expenses because that's very common, and that immediately increases your bottom line. You didn't increase your income, but you just decreased your expenses because you shifted it towards the tenant. Does that answer your question, Ben?
It does, thank you.
Yeah, so it's not in your immediate view, but you can definitely find those triple nets with the higher returns. Any other final questions? And folks, feel free to connect afterwards. I'm available. I mean, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but you can also directly reach out to me through my email or my website. And John, a year from now, I totally expect to hear from you and say, hey, you were right. I just bought my retail shopping plaza.
I hope so. Your lips to God's ears.
You and Selena are still in touch? You guys are still working
Oh
together?
yeah. We just haven't we haven't actually had a meetup in the past couple months, but we're hopefully gearing up at least by March to start it right back up again.
Got it. Awesome. Very good. Well, Jerry, I wanna thank you for bringing me over. You have a great group of people, and it was a pleasure presenting here.
Yes, thank you for coming on. But yeah, definitely everybody reach out to Lena afterwards. Thank you again, and I appreciate it. We have for those that want to hang around, I'm gonna keep the room open for 10 minutes, and I'll do a breakout room, and a couple of people can chat. Alina, I appreciate you. Don't definitely do not feel like you have to hang around, and we'll do that. And John, I'll hit you up if you're gonna do a meeting. Let's do it in Stage House in March.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely should.
All right, cool. Thank you again.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.
Stop video.